Look, I'm going to be real with you. I need to tell someone what happened. The whole story. And honestly, even after all this time, I still don't think I was wrong. My name is Sloane. I'm 31 now. But this all started 2 years ago. It began in a cold, sterile room that smelled like antiseptic wipes and bad news. The kind of room where the chair is never quite comfortable, and the art on the wall is so generic it makes you feel even more invisible. The doctor, a woman with kind eyes that didn't match the devastating words coming out of her mouth, looked at my chart, then at me. She didn't sugarcoat it. "The scarring is extensive, Sloane," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Based on these results, a pregnancy just isn't a possibility. Not a low chance. Not a we can try this situation. A full stop." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. A possibility. That's what it was, wasn't it? The whole point of, well, everything. I thought about my husband, Julian. We'd been married for 3 years. We weren't actively trying for kids yet, but it was always there. The silent assumption. The one day. The doctor kept talking. Something about options, counseling, the future. But I couldn't hear her. My mind was racing, connecting dots I hadn't even realized were on the same page. All those years of intimacy, of going through the motions. What was it all for, if not for that one biological purpose? To build a family. To create something that was a part of both of you. That's literally what it's for, right? And in that moment, under the hum of the fluorescent lights, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. It felt less like grief and more like a revelation, an excuse. I'd been faking it for years anyway. Not the love for Julian, that was real. But the other part, the physical part, I did it because it was expected. It was the currency of a happy marriage. You perform, you meet needs, you check the box. But the desire, the real, deep-seated want for it, that had faded a long time ago, if it was ever truly there to begin with. Now, I had a reason. A real, medical, undeniable reason to stop pretending. This wasn't me being selfish. This was me being practical, mature. I sat there, nodding at the doctor as she finished her speech, my mind already rewriting the rules of my marriage. Julian was at work. He has some complicated job in supply chain management, moving things from one place to another. He always comes home exhausted, his shoulders slumped from the weight of the day. I told myself this would actually be a relief for him. No more pressure. No more unspoken expectations. We could finally move past the shallow physical stuff and focus on what really mattered. A true partnership. An emotional connection. A meeting of minds. I was evolving our relationship. I was taking us to a deeper level. And I didn't need his permission to do it. This was my body, my diagnosis, and therefore, my decision. I walked out of that clinic feeling strangely powerful. Like I'd just been handed a key. Not to a future with a family, but to a future where I was finally, completely, in control. I was wrong about that. So wrong. But at the time, it felt like the truest thing in the world. The key turned in the lock at 6:15, same as always. I heard the familiar sound of Julian's briefcase dropping by the door, the sigh as he kicked off his shoes. I was sitting on the couch, the television off, the silence in the apartment, feeling deliberate, heavy. I'd rehearsed the words in my head all afternoon. He walked in and smiled when he saw me. That tired, gentle smile that always made my heart ache a little. "Hey, you," he said, moving to kiss me. I turned my head slightly, so his lips landed on my cheek. A small gesture, the first brick in the new wall. He frowned, sensing the shift immediately. "Everything okay?" I took a deep breath. "We need to talk. I went to the doctor today." I laid it out for him. The diagnosis. The finality of it. I watched his face fall, the color draining from it. I saw the pain in his eyes, the immediate sympathy, for me, for us. He reached for my hand. Sloane, I'm so sorry, he whispered. We'll figure this out. We can see another doctor. We can look at. No. I pulled my hand away. That's not what this is about. I've accepted it. And it's made me realize something. Here it was. The pivot. I can't have children, I said, my voice steady, practiced. So there's no point anymore. We're not doing that anymore. Julian just stared at me. His face was a perfect blank. It was like I'd just switched to a foreign language in the middle of a sentence. Doing what? He finally stammered. You know what, Julian? The physical side of things. It's over. The silence that followed was deafening. He just kept looking at me, his brow furrowed, as if he was trying to solve a complex puzzle. He started asking questions, his voice getting a little higher with each one. What did the doctor exactly say? Could we please just get a second opinion? What about adoption? I shut that down fast. I'm not interested in raising someone else's child, pretending to be a family we're not. He recoiled like I'd slapped him. Pretending? Sloane, intimacy isn't just about making babies. It's about connection. It's about us. All that mushy stuff. I was so tired of it. So tired of pretending that a physical act meant anything more than its biological function. No, I said, my voice rising a little. That's where you're wrong. I'm dealing with this huge medical reality, and it's changed things for me. For my body, and if you really loved me, this wouldn't be a problem. I saw the hurt flash in his eyes. Good. He needed to understand the stakes. Real love isn't about physical stuff, Julian. That's shallow thinking. This is my decision about my body, and I need you to respect it. If you can't handle being in a mature relationship where we focus on an emotional connection instead of that, then maybe you're not the man I thought you were. The look on his face was one of pure devastation, but I stood my ground. I felt strong. I felt righteous. For the first time, I wasn't accommodating his needs. I was setting my own rules, based on my reality. It was time for him to accommodate mine. This was the ultimate test of his love, and I was absolutely certain he would pass. He didn't pass. Not in the way I expected. For the next 2 years. Yes, 2 entire years. Julian would not let it go. It became this silent, ugly thing that lived in our apartment, taking up all the air. He'd try to bring it up constantly, always with some new, gentle angle he thought I wouldn't see through. At first, it was couples counseling. Sloane, honey, he'd start, always when I was relaxed, maybe watching a show or reading. I was thinking, maybe we could talk to someone. Together. A neutral third party. I'd immediately feel my defenses go up. Talk about what? So a stranger can try and convince me to change my mind about my own body? No, thank you. I don't need to be ganged up on. Then, it was individual therapy for me. I just worry about you, he'd say, his voice laced with that infuriating, fake concern. You went through something traumatic. Maybe talking about it would help you process. Process what? I have processed it, Julian. I've made a mature decision about our future. The problem isn't my processing. The problem is your acceptance. Then came the parade of second opinions, new doctors, articles he'd printed out about miracle treatments. The audacity. Like I was some hysterical little girl who hadn't thought through her own life-altering decision. Like my no was just a suggestion. It was insulting. Every conversation felt like a negotiation, a chess match where he was trying to maneuver me back into a box I had just escaped from. So, I developed strategies. I had to. It was self-preservation. Sometimes, when he'd start his gentle, understanding routine, I'd just let the tears come. My face would crumple, and I'd whisper about how he was making me feel broken. How his constant pressure was a reminder of what my body couldn't do. The guilt would wash over his face, and he'd immediately backtrack, apologizing, stroking my hair. Checkmate. Other times, I'd get angry. I'd raise my voice, storm out of the room, and lock myself in the bedroom. He'd be left standing in the living room, the silence of his failure ringing in his ears. He would feel guilty for even bringing it up. Double check. But my absolute favorite was when I'd flip it back on him. So, let me get this straight, I'd say, my voice dripping with ice. My medical condition, my inability to give you a child, that isn't enough for you? You still need me to be physically available, even though it's all pointless now? What kind of man does that make you, Julian? That one shut him up, every single time. He'd flinch, a dark shame crossing his features. He couldn't argue with that logic. Because what could he say? Yes, I am that kind of man? Of course not. Between us, I started to enjoy the control. For once in our relationship, I was the one setting the boundaries. I was the one who got to say no and have it actually stick. Do you know how rare that is? For a woman to just say no and have it be the end of the discussion? Usually, you're expected to compromise, to soften, to meet in the middle. But this time, I had medical backing. This wasn't a preference, it was a consequence, a fact. I figured he'd come around eventually. He just needed time to adjust to our new reality, to realize that what we had now, this purer, deeper, emotional companionship, was actually better. But he didn't come around. He just got colder, more distant. He started to build his own walls. And I watched, annoyed, as my perfect, mature relationship began to feel like a cold, empty house. The final straw for him came in the form of a betrayal. A secret. He started seeing a therapist, by himself. He didn't tell me at first. I found out when I saw a charge on our credit card statement. Dr. Anya Sharma. I didn't recognize the name. A quick Google search told me everything I needed to know. A marriage and family counselor. I confronted him that night, the printed statement shaking in my hand. Who is this? He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He just looked tired. She's a therapist, Sloane. I needed someone to talk to. To talk about what? I demanded, though I already knew. To complain about me behind my back? To get strategies on how to wear me down? How could you, Julian? That's so sneaky. It's not sneaky, he said, his voice flat. It's called getting help, something I've been begging you to do with me for 2 years. A few weeks after that, he came to me with a letter. An actual, physical letter, folded neatly. He told me he'd worked on it with Dr. Sharma, which only made me see red. Now his betrayal had an accomplice. The letter was, I have to admit, it was carefully worded. All diplomatic and full of I feel statements. Probably because his therapist helped him write it. It talked about how much he loved me, how he cherished the life we had built. But it also said our marriage was falling apart, that he felt lonely and disconnected, and like he was losing his best friend. It basically rehashed the same old arguments, just on nice stationery. Could we please try counseling together, just once? Would I at least consider seeing a specialist about possible hormone treatments that might affect my libido, if not my fertility? It ended with some garbage about how he wanted to fight for our relationship, but he needed to know I was willing to fight, too. Reading it just made me furious. First of all, the audacity. Putting this all in writing, like some kind of business proposal for my affection. Second, the manipulation. Making it seem like I wasn't fighting for our relationship. I was. I was the one trying to guide us towards something deeper, something more meaningful. I was setting healthy boundaries to protect myself from constant reminders of my medical failure. But apparently, that didn't count as fighting. But what really got me, what made the blood pound in my ears, was the underlying message that I, Sloane, was broken. That my decision wasn't good enough. That I needed to be fixed, or changed, or medicated just to make him happy. After 2 years, 2 years of him wearing me down with the same requests, over and over and over again. And here he was, one more time, just in letter form. I snapped. I walked into the kitchen, my whole body trembling with a rage I hadn't felt in years. I yanked open the junk drawer and grabbed the first thing I saw, a thick, red Sharpie. I stalked back into the living room where he was sitting, watching me with those sad, hopeful eyes. I unfolded his precious, therapist-approved letter on the coffee table, and with big, angry slashes, I wrote right across the middle of his carefully crafted words, "Go get it elsewhere, because you're not getting it from me." I didn't even reread it. I just threw the letter at his chest. It fluttered to the floor between us. Then I grabbed my keys and walked out. I drove for hours, the fury burning a hole in my stomach. Honestly, a part of me was just calling his bluff. My Julian? The man who followed rules, who worried about being a good guy. He wouldn't dare. This, I thought, would finally be the shock to his system that he needed. This would make him realize how serious I was. He would finally stop bringing it up. He would see how much he was pushing me, and he would back down. He would choose me. He always chose me. When I got home that night, the house was dark except for a single lamp in the kitchen. He was sitting at the table, the letter spread out in front of him, my red scrawl glowing under the light. He didn't look angry. He didn't look hurt. He just looked still. He looked up as I walked in. His face was calm, unreadable. "Okay," he said. Just that. One word. It was so quiet, so devoid of emotion. It was more chilling than any shouting match. It was the okay you use when you agree to take out the trash. "What do you mean, okay?" I asked, a nervous laugh catching in my throat. He looked down at the letter, then back at me. "You've made your position clear, and you've given me permission to handle my needs elsewhere. So, that's what I'm going to do." I actually did laugh then. A short, sharp, disbelieving sound. "You're not serious." He carefully folded the letter, creasing it along the original lines, my red ink disappearing into the folds. Then he slid it into his wallet. "I'm completely serious, Sloane. You've told me for 2 years that this is how you want our marriage to be. You just put it in writing, so now I know where we stand." The weirdest thing was the total lack of anger. He was just matter of fact. Like he'd been running this exact scenario through his head for months, and my note was just the final variable he needed to solve the equation. It creeped me out. This wasn't the Julian I knew, the one who would spend an hour apologizing if he accidentally left dishes in the sink. This was a stranger. I started to backtrack, panic fluttering in my chest. "I was just frustrated, Julian. I didn't mean it literally." He held up a hand to stop me. He didn't even take the wallet out. "It seems pretty literal to me," he said, his voice still unnervingly calm. "You even underlined elsewhere." Had I? I couldn't remember. I was just so angry. He told me he'd been thinking about this for months. His therapist, that damned Dr. Sharma, had helped him understand that some problems can't be solved if only one person is willing to work on them. Apparently, I had made it crystal clear that I was not willing to work on this particular problem. So, he was going to solve it his own way. I spent the next few days in a daze, waiting. Waiting for the apology. Waiting for him to take it back, to admit it was a stupid, cruel thing to say. But he didn't. If anything, he seemed lighter. The constant tension in his shoulders was gone. He'd hum while making his coffee in the morning. A weight had been lifted off him, and I was beginning to realize that maybe I was the weight. 3 months later, I found out. I was picking up his shirts from the dry cleaner, the same one we'd been using for years. The woman behind the counter, a sweet older lady named Carol, was ringing me up. "It's so nice to see Mr. Miller smiling again," she said, completely out of the blue. "That new girlfriend of his, Tessa, she seems to be really good for him." The world tilted on its axis. The plastic bag of shirts suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "What? What did you say?" Carol's face immediately fell. She started stammering, backtracking, her cheeks turning bright pink. "Oh, I'm so sorry, dear. I just assumed. I mean, I see them in here together sometimes, and he just looks so happy." The damage was done. I confronted him that night. I didn't scream. I was strangely calm. I just asked him. And he didn't even try to deny it. "Yes," he said. "You're cheating on me," I stated, needing to say the words out loud, to make them real. He sighed, walked over to the dresser, and pulled out his wallet. He took out my letter. It was folded and worn now, soft at the creases, like he'd been carrying it around for months. He held it out. "You told me to get it elsewhere," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "This is elsewhere." "That's not what I meant." I finally screamed, the dam of my composure breaking. He just looked at me, with a flicker of the old, sad Julian in his eyes. "Then what did you mean, Sloane?" "Because I asked you to clarify that night. And you never did." The tears started then. Not fake strategic tears. These were hot, real tears of pure frustration and disbelief. "I meant you should stop bothering me about it," I sobbed. "Not actually go and sleep with other people." He stared at me like I was speaking another language. "So, you wanted me to be celibate for the rest of my life, and just never mention it again?" When he put it like that, it sounded unreasonable. But that wasn't the point. The point was the betrayal. The point was that he was supposed to choose me, over his own needs, over everything else. That's what marriage means. "I want you to end it," I demanded, wiping my eyes. "End it right now, and we can try counseling. Together. I'm willing to compromise now." Finally, right? I was giving him what he wanted. But the stranger in my husband's body just tilted his head. "What would be the goal of counseling, Sloane?" "To communicate, to work through our problems." "Would the goal be to get you to change your mind about physical intimacy?" he asked, his voice clinical. I hesitated. Counseling is about finding solutions, not about me changing a fundamental decision about my medical reality. "So, counseling to help us both accept a sexless marriage?" he pressed. "If that's what it takes, yes." He was quiet for a long, long time, just looking at me. Then he shook his head slowly. "I don't think I can do that, Sloane. I don't think I want to." The honesty was a physical blow. After everything we'd built, this one thing was more important to him than our entire relationship. It proved everything I'd suspected about his priorities. "So you have to choose," I said, my voice trembling. "It's me, or it's her." But he didn't choose. Or rather, he chose to do nothing. He wouldn't agree to end things with her, Tessa, unless I could promise that counseling might actually lead to real change. But I couldn't promise that. I wouldn't. I had made my decision. The next few months were absolute hell. Julian was living a double life, and he wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. He'd get texts and answer them right in front of me. He'd come home some nights smelling of a perfume that wasn't mine. I tried everything. I'd cry and tell him how much he was hurting me. I'd get angry and threaten to pack my bags. I'd try to be sweet and remind him of all the good times we'd had. Nothing worked. He remained calm through it all, like he'd made peace with the situation, and I was the one being dramatic. "Our marriage was already broken, Sloane," he'd say calmly, when I screamed at him. "This is just me refusing to be miserable while we figure out what comes next." Our friends started picking sides, and I was shocked by how many of them sided with him. Apparently, he'd been more open about our situation than I realized. They knew about my decision. They knew about the letter. They saw him as the victim. Me? I was the one being cheated on. How was he the victim? My own sister told me I was torturing both of us and I should just let him go. The worst part was when I started looking her up online. Tessa. It was easy to find her. Her social media was public. She worked in marketing or something equally basic. She wasn't even prettier than me. Just available. Uncomplicated. Willing to give him whatever he wanted without any difficult conversations. But seeing the pictures, that's what really destroyed me. Pictures of them at a winery, at the beach, grilling in someone's backyard. He looked happy, relaxed. The man in those pictures wasn't the tired, quiet, tense person I had been living with for 2 years. This version of Julian laughed from his belly. He looked confident. He looked like the man I first fell in love with, and he was that man, with her. That's when I knew I was losing him for real, and my desperation turned into a cold, hard resolve. I had to end this. I gave him one final ultimatum. I packed a bag. I told him he had until the end of the week to end it with Tessa and commit, truly commit, to counseling with me. Otherwise, I was gone. His response was quiet. What's the point, Sloan, if you've already decided the main issue is off the table forever? He filed for divorce 3 weeks later. I couldn't believe it. After everything, he was throwing it all away for some random woman he'd known for a few months. It just proved everything I'd always suspected. Men are only interested in one thing. You take that away, and their loyalty vanishes. The divorce was nasty. He had documentation of everything. My letter, now preserved in a plastic sleeve like a piece of evidence, records of his texts and emails begging me to try counseling. He even had notes from his individual therapy sessions with Dr. Sharma, detailing how my withholding of affection was affecting his mental health. He painted me as the unreasonable one, the cold, stubborn wife who used her medical condition as a weapon. Even my own family started to question my side of the story. My mom actually asked me, Sloan, what did you expect him to do? If you weren't willing to be a wife to him in all the ways that matter. Even she was taking his side. I lost most of our mutual friends. I lost the house. The final insult was seeing a Facebook post 6 months later. Julian and Tessa had moved in together. There was a picture of them on a new porch, holding a dog, with a sign that said, "Our first home." They looked disgustingly, genuinely happy. So now, I'm here. In this new, smaller apartment that never really feels like home. And honestly, I'm done trying to make anyone understand my side. Julian chose immediate physical gratification over building something deeper with me. Our friends chose to support the cheater over the wife who was dealing with a medical crisis. My family chose to blame me instead of supporting me through the hardest time of my life. Fine. I don't need any of them. I made a reasonable, logical decision based on my medical reality. I set a boundary. I'm not apologizing for that. If Julian was too shallow to appreciate the kind of profound emotional partnership we could have had, then that is his loss. If this new woman, Tessa, makes him happy by giving him everything he wants without any challenges or depth, good for them. I hope they're very happy in their superficial little relationship. I'm sure it'll last forever, built on such a solid foundation as she gives me what I want when I want it. A truly mature foundation for a life partnership. As for me, I'm focusing on myself now. I don't need someone who can't handle a real relationship with real challenges. I'm better off alone than with someone who would throw away years of history the moment things got complicated. Everyone else can think whatever they want. They can whisper and take sides. It doesn't matter. I know what really happened. And I know I did